But when I've worked in Target, Kohl's, and Cheesecake Factory, there's always this moment.
Ooh, the big three we called them.
Yeah, the big three. And you know what? Cheesecake Factory, visit our Patreon. You were the best out of all of them. So all these critiques are not for you, Cheesecake Factory. We love you.
That's ridiculous.
This episode brought to you by the Cheesecake
Factory.
But there's a moment.
We have to make a final fifth category on the Patreon. That's just like the cheesecake category tier.
Cheesecake Factory.
Cheesecake Factory tier.
But when I'm talking to someone who's been there for years, and I don't want to say this in any sort of condescending way, but I'm like, this really is bullshit. The way that they push us to the limit, the way that they're the managers are always flying by, being like, "Don't you care about the customer?" I'm like, I don't know them from Adam. Why in the world do I care about these people who are so rude to me all the time? And when I'm talking to someone, I'm like, yeah, this is really ridiculous. And they respond just like, yeah, no, but this is what we do here. This is what makes Cheesecake Factory this is what makes Kohl's so amazing. And it's really disconcerting because it's like, I thought we were playing a different game here. That
no, but you're a team. You're not seeing yourself as a team member. See, Will, you're not an employee. Okay, you're on a team. When you're on a team, you have a common objective, a common end, a common purpose that you should assimilate yourself to.
Okay, this is a perfect hinge. Right? Because she says that it's the disappointment. You try to take things seriously, and you realize that in much the way you're describing, Will, it's bullshit. And this is where the serious man turns over into the next form, the next figure, which is the nihilist.
Oh, the black pill.
Right? The black pill, right? You take that doom pill and say, no values are at all meaningful, right? All of it is nonsense. There's nothing here to be found at all. The game of seriousness was a trick all along, and so nothing has any value and could ever have any value. Right? This is our third form here. And then what does this person end up doing? But as she describes, this is just like your petty anarchist sowing disorder, right? Anytime someone says that something matters or means anything, they come along and go, no, it doesn't, and overturn the apple cart.
Yeah, you start to hate earnestness. Like earnestness
hate earnestness.
Yeah.
I'd like to think of this, this character type, since we're trying to come up with examples. This is definitely Will circa 17, 18 years old. I just finished reading Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged.
Oh,
you read that too? Yeah.
I did too. I read that.
I'm the only one that never happened to.
Yeah,
well, you're missing out.
The eye of fire.
I actually don't know how much of a radical you can be, Owen, if you haven't gone through an Ayn Rand period. When you realize that everyone, for me,
there might be dialectical truth to that.
Oh my God, would it be crazy if we read the Fountainhead for the podcast?
I refuse to read that.
I guess
ever again. I spent so much time reading those 2,000 dog shit pages. Just a terrible prose stylist. It's the worst philosophy ever. Hey, do you know what Ayn Rand's epistemology is?
Oh,
A equals A. A is A.
Yeah, you know things because you can know stuff with reason. So just try that.
And is that objectivism, Gil?
It's objectivism. Okay. It's pretty strong.
We gotta have an episode
That's
of
true.
objectivism. Come on.
I was like, you're turning down my offer, but I feel like there's a lot of and the softcore libertarian porn is also of interest. Yeah, isn't it? It's literally
That's
people,
exactly what it is.
People who are so independent that they're gonna have really great sex about it.
That sounds impossible.
It's the Paul Ryan manifesto. I would just think of Paul Ryan every time I hear it.
Paul Ryan.
Wait, I'm sorry. Yeah. We're really just going to zoom by. Lily said it was softcore libertarian pornography. And that wasn't a metaphor. She actually was.
No, it was very literal.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Put that into your Google search bar. What comes up is probably Dan Crenshaw jumping out of the plane.
I don't need this. I'm already on so many lists. I can't afford...
True, fair enough. But I actually, when I taught this book and I got to the nihilist part, I was talking to my first year undergraduate students. I said to them, the first time you go to a party in college, you will encounter the nihilist. Everyone's going to think they're the most interesting person in the room. They're sitting in the corner, it's like, oh, wow, you believe in peace? It's all meaningless at the end of the day. Are we not all just random accumulation of molecules, proceeding from the Big Bang? And I'm like, wow, deep. And
I read Nietzsche and why not prefer war?
Like, why not?
cool, dude.
Okay, that I'm not gonna lie. Embarrassing confession. That person was me, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So
Okay, there it is. So I tried to do my part for the culture, and I said, please do not find that person interesting. They are just deeply afraid. You know, they had some failures and disappointments. In fact, if anything, have some pity for them. Like, you know, it's hard not growing up. You know?
So 2 things I wanted to say here. One of them is, like, as I was just quoting her as saying, like, the nihilist, and as you're saying at the party, like, all they do is sow disorder and anarchy and kind of just try to undermine everything. There was a moment earlier in the text, and we're going to, by the way, circle back to and try to give a full-throated definition of freedom in Beauvoir's sense, as after we've like kind of run through all of this. But one of the things she says in trying to distinguish freedom from revolt, and I think this is really important, because the nihilist is capable of revolting, right? But still isn't actually free in this genuine sense.
abstract negation.
It's an abstract thing. And so this is a quote from the first chapter about, like, I don't know, toward the end of it. She writes, "Revolt, insofar as it is pure negative movement, remains abstract. It is fulfilled as freedom only by returning to the positive, that is, by giving itself a content through action, escape, political struggle, revolution." Right? And so this, like, desire just to smash and destroy is, like, not actually freedom in her analysis, right? It's just this pure negativity that, like, you know, revolt's all well and good, but freedom actually has to have a positive consistency. It has to be for something. It has to be realized in the form of a project, right? It does actually have to have an end.
But again, I think it's important to point to the temptation that she identifies with nihilism, right?
Yes.
So what is it that draws us there? And I love the example she gives of Baudelaire. Right? She says it was necessary for him, I'm just going to quote this for a second, she says, "It was necessary for him that the universe which he rejected continue in order for him to detest it and scoff at it." Right? And I think there's so many kind of black-pilled kind of internet posters, right, who you can just tell how deeply attached they are to the kind of apocalyptic trajectory of the world. And it seems like it comes from a place of concern. But actually, I usually just get the sense that they would feel utterly lost, like, if good things started happening. Like, they don't actually want good things to start happening. They need this apocalyptic trajectory, and they're fused to it, assimilated with it. You know,
Accelerationist.
For instance.
I think that there's lots of people, like, I mean, the people you're describing are kind of hardcore versions of it, but I think it exists in subtler forms.
Good point.
Yes,
it's true.
Definitely.
Like, this is really how I think about, like, people who are on the far left who are just never able to be happy about anything happening. And okay, so when something goes on, looking for the limitations is the first and only thing that you do. So, like, inability to feel excitement and joy about something going on. And that's not to say that that's not to say that you shouldn't be always developing criticisms. Like, if there's a social movement happening, you should totally start to develop criticisms, like, as soon as they come to you. But I mean, like, the inability to kind of experience joy and optimism and, like, social movement, and the desire to try to collaborate with others in actual, like, realizing one's own freedom, and instead just kind of putting the kibosh on that, like, it'll never be good enough or something. And I think I first read this, it must have been like 2013 or something, because I wrote in the margins that this reminded me of Occupy Wall Street. And so you can see, like, where my head was at when I was reading it, because I wrote revolt and pure negativity remains abstract. And that's what that experience was like for me. It was like, we won't set forward any demands. This is purely negative. And we're gonna militantly keep it negative, and you can't make it positive, because it would require, to have a positive content, we'd have to have a consensus, but we can't have a consensus. And I remember, like, reading this, and I was like, oh my God, that's what that was.
Yeah, I think at a later date we might end up having to do an episode on. We've been talking about, like, tikkun a little bit, and sort of the fetish for this negativity in the form of what they call, like, destituent power. is like, I think something that I might fall prey to this same sort of diagnosis, right? We want to get into it. Like, that's the sort of thing that I'm worried about, at least when I see all these like people talking about like, destituent power, or just like, destruction as like the kind of end in itself. We can't posit an end or have a kind of positive program. Seems to fall kind of exactly into this trap that Beauvoir is diagnosing.
I mean, I found the same thing with Occupy, right? There was a real part of why it fizzled out was just the kind of refusal to start taking any kind of positive, to start engaging any kind of positive, concrete vision. And for a while, that was like its energy, right? It had that energy of pure revolt. But then without moving from that, the state of what you called abstract, the kind of abstract negation towards something, I don't know, just nobody wanted to. I don't know why you think that is, Lillian, because I don't think I actually have a good account of why that particularly happened with that. I don't want to make a whole episode about Occupy.
For Occupy?
Yeah.
Well, she does say, Beauvoir says herself toward the end of the book that like it's actually kind of easy to get everybody on board with revolt, right?
Yes.
Like name a common enemy, engage in this like work of negation, right? Fight against something that you want to destroy. It's actually kind of easy to get a lot of people together under that tent. But the minute it's a matter of trying to articulate a common vision for a project with like, goals, and then we're going to have a discussion subsequent to that about the means by which we're going to achieve those ends. All of a sudden, fragmentation gets back into the scene very quickly and easily, right? And so like she gives examples of people who like got the negative moment right in their youth and then like get assimilated, right? It's easy to like get assimilated as a reactionary, even for people who really nail that first
like the
moment.
boomers. I feel like they got assimilated.
What did they negate?
I feel like they think
Once
of,
upon a
they
time.
think they were negating, but
guess
now
so.
they're like the Democratic Party vanguard.
Yeah, but they were the adventurers, right? They were Beauvoir's adventurers.
Oh,
right? They're kind of
maybe they're a different type.
subjective, abstract, one-sided freedom. That's all about your kind of personal self-realization, but it
Right,
hasn't
this is
yet
our fourth figure, the adventurer.
the adventurer, right? That hasn't yet figured out how to commune with others and the freedom of others. And so it becomes a kind of that becomes solipsism.
Yeah, before we move on to the adventurer, because there's something complicated with the adventurer. The adventurer is, sort of the first archetype where it seems like Beauvoir is saying there are two ways the adventure could go. She says there are two attitudes. But before we do that, I want to say just a little bit more about the nihilist to sort of connect it, more to sort of contemporary issues. I think, the reason why I'm so antagonistic towards the nihilist is when the George Floyd protests first broke out. And it was this moment where we were all texting during that moment, and all that. It felt like, what is happening? We have not seen something like this. And immediately on the internet and all of that, people who, I don't know if they went to the protests or not, people were saying like, oh, you all are getting so excited about this. Nothing's going to change. You're just getting duped. And there seems to be something, and I'm willing to commit to, there's something deeply immature about it because you are not risking anything. And what I'm hearing is rather than risking putting forward a positive project that may or may not fail, you're already just saying from the outset, oh, look at these rubes. Getting all excited about this. Look at these fools.
As if you
getting
have
out in
tons
the
of
street.
political experience to like
Exactly.
help enlighten
You offer
us.
nothing. And but the thing is, no one can
Our
ever prove you
disorganized
wrong.
and like totally politically immature generation, you're going to be the one to tell everybody that they
you're
are too
the
excited.
one who already has, well, not even has the answers, just already has the no on hand, and
Or
so
already
what I
has the
also-
cold water to pour on proposed
Yeah.
answers.
And what Beauvoir would have an issue with this is like it's not just like their abstract revolt, but they don't risk anything. There's no way to prove the nihilists wrong because eventually there will be disappointment. Eventually that you're going to encounter the antinomy. And so it's a fundamentally safe position that gestures, that postures as if it's completely radical, but there isn't a lot there.